Welcome to Southwest Desert, where adventure meets the arid beauty of the American Southwest. Join us as we explore the rugged landscapes, uncover hidden historical gems, and dive deep into the rich legends and culture of this iconic region. Subscribe now and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on our latest desert adventures. Please leave a like or comment. This is very helpful. Let's journey together into the heart of the Southwest Desert. Welcome to Southwest Desert, the channel that uncovers the hidden stories of the American Southwest. I'm your host, Alan. Parents today love to complain about teenagers. They lament how young people won't listen, act wild, challenge authority, obsess over money, and avoid hard work. Sound familiar? Now imagine going back in time over a century to territorial Arizona, before statehood, before cell phones, before TikTok. You might think teenagers back then were different, more respectful, harder working, more responsible. Well, today's story is going to shatter that myth with a spectacular case study in teenage rebellion from 1910. Two brothers, 18 and 16 years old, who weren't interested in honest work, decided the quickest way to solve their money problems was to rob a train. And not just any train, one carrying territorial officials and law enforcement officers. Even more remarkably, their pursuit and capture became a pivotal moment in transportation history and launched the political career of a man who would serve in Congress for 56 years, longer than anyone else in American history. This is the true story of the Woodson brothers' train robbery. It was April 1910 in Phoenix, Arizona Territory. Statehood was still almost 2 years away. The desert metropolis we know today was then a small frontier town surrounded by agricultural land, connected to the outside world primarily by railroads. In this dusty, developing city lived two brothers, Ernie Woodson, 18, and his younger brother Oscar, 16. Little is known about their family background. Their parents aren't mentioned in historical accounts, suggesting a notable lack of supervision. What we do know is that the Woodson brothers had a problem many teenagers would recognize. They were completely broke. Like many teenagers throughout history, Ernie and Oscar had definite ideas about what kind of work they were willing to do. They spent considerable time applying for jobs around Phoenix, but each opportunity encountered the same objections. Agricultural work, too physically demanding from sunrise to sunset 6 days a week. Construction, similar complaints. Factory work, monotonous and exhausting. The brothers had clear employment criteria. The job should be fun, require minimal effort, and pay well immediately. Unsurprisingly, Phoenix employers in 1910 weren't racing to meet these demands. As April stretched into May, the brothers' financial desperation grew. They spent long days lounging outdoors, watching dust devils swirl across the landscape, talking endlessly about their money problems. That's when Oscar had a sudden inspiration. His eyes lit up as he turned to his older brother with an idea about robbing a train. Ernie's response was skeptical. The idea seemed absurd. Where would they get the money for train tickets? How would they pull it off? What about the risks? But Oscar was undeterred. He had thought it through. They could afford the inexpensive Phoenix-Maricopa shuttle, and the element of surprise would work in their favor. Gradually, Ernie's resistance weakened as Oscar laid out the details. The brothers developed their plan: travel by train, rob the passengers, and escape to Mexico. Simple, direct, and potentially lucrative. By May 11th, 1910, they were ready to put their criminal scheme into action. That morning, the brothers somehow acquired 2 horses and revolvers. The historical record doesn't explain how penniless teenagers managed this feat, and rode along the railroad tracks. About 15 minutes from the station, they concealed their horses and returned to Phoenix. At the station, they purchased tickets for the 6:10 p.m. train and boarded inconspicuously. What they didn't know was that their chosen train was carrying several territorial officials returning from a legislative session, including the Attorney General and the Sheriff of Gila County. When the train reached the spot where they'd hidden their horses, the brothers sprang into action. They drew their revolvers and ordered the conductor to stop the train. Once it had come to a halt, they methodically robbed the passengers, targeting the territorial officials and law enforcement officers first. The irony of robbing a train full of government officials, including actual law enforcement, seemed lost on the teenage bandits. They collected approximately $300 in cash and valuables, equivalent to over $8,000 today. In a particularly shocking move, they pistol-whipped a passenger before leaping from the train, retrieving their horses and galloping south toward the Mexican border. News of the robbery quickly reached Phoenix, where it landed on the desk of Maricopa County Sheriff Carl Hayden. Hayden was a native Arizonan born in the territorial period, a man who had grown up during the Apache raids, the OK Corral gunfight, and the Pleasant Valley feud. Train robbery was a serious federal offense, and Hayden immediately took command of the response. Showing remarkable organizational skills, Hayden assembled a posse and arranged for a special train to transport them and their horses to the crime scene. At the robbery location, they found scattered evidence, discarded wallets and torn purses, and clear hoof prints leading south. The posse mounted their horses and began their pursuit, led by an expert Pima tracker. Sheriff Hayden traveled with them until they reached the settlement of Maricopa, where he made a decision that would transform the chase and, in some ways, symbolize the changing American frontier. At Maricopa, Sheriff Hayden encountered J.F. McCarthy, a hotel proprietor who owned something rare and valuable, an automobile. Specifically, a Stoddard Dayton worth $3,000, the equivalent of about $85,000 today. This vehicle held the territorial speed record and represented cutting-edge technology for 1910 Arizona. Hayden immediately recognized the advantage an automobile would provide in the desert pursuit. Horses, while reliable, suffered from the May heat and limited water. The sheriff proposed commandeering McCarthy's automobile with one condition from the owner: McCarthy would drive it himself. Hayden agreed without hesitation. He, McCarthy, and a U.S. Customs official climbed into the automobile and continued the chase, creating what may have been Arizona's first motorized posse. The automobile proved its worth as they navigated the challenging desert terrain. McCarthy skillfully maneuvered through arroyos, around cacti, and through greasewood brush. When they encountered the rest of the posse at a Papago, now called Tohono O'odham village, Hayden assessed the situation. The horses were exhausted from the heat and pace. He selected a small group of deputies to continue on horseback while he pressed ahead in the automobile. The tracking was straightforward, as the Woodson brothers had made no attempt to hide their trail. They were heading directly for Mexico, apparently confident in their escape plan. That confidence proved misplaced. After riding hard through the night, the brothers and their horses were exhausted. They stopped to rest in a sandy arroyo that offered some shade. While recovering, they spotted a dust cloud in the distance, another automobile, an extraordinary sight in the 1910 desert. In a critical error of judgment, the brothers assumed it was a wealthy miner on a recreational drive. Far from hiding, they emerged from cover, intending to request assistance. Instead, they found themselves facing Sheriff Hayden and his makeshift motorized posse. The deputies leapt from the vehicle, weapons drawn, and demanded surrender. Ernest immediately threw up his hands, but Oscar hesitated, his hand still in his pocket. One deputy cocked his weapon, creating a tense standoff. Sheriff Hayden intervened, speaking calmly to Oscar. He pointed out that the brothers' revolvers weren't even loaded, a fact they hadn't realized during their robbery. Using a measured, almost paternal tone, Hayden persuaded Oscar to surrender without violence. Less than 20 hours after the robbery, the Woodson brothers were in custody. The posse returned to Phoenix by train after the automobile suffered a flat tire, arriving to public acclaim. The citizens were particularly impressed by Sheriff Hayden's innovative use of the automobile, a technology that symbolized the modernization of law enforcement in the changing West. The Woodson brothers faced federal charges for horse theft and armed robbery. Found guilty, they were sentenced to 10 years in a Kansas penitentiary. However, they served only 3.5 years before being released on probation. Historical records don't mention what became of them afterward. Their brief criminal adventure represents their only appearance in Arizona history. For Sheriff Carl Hayden, however, the train robbery became a stepping stone to an extraordinary political career. When Arizona achieved statehood in 1912, Hayden successfully ran for Congress, beginning an unprecedented 56-year tenure in Washington. Hayden's life spanned a remarkable breadth of American history. Born in territorial Arizona, he witnessed the final chapter of the frontier era. Then, as a congressman and senator, he navigated World War I, the Great Depression, World War II, the Korean War, the Cold War, and the Vietnam War. He watched transportation evolve from horses to automobiles to airplanes to spacecraft, and played a role in that transformation through legislation. But it was his role in the Woodson brothers' case that first demonstrated Hayden's pragmatic leadership and willingness to embrace new technology. That innovative spirit would serve him well through decades of political service until his retirement in 1969 at age 91, after serving in Congress longer than anyone else in American history. Join my Patreon community and discover my art print products on my website in the links provided in my description and link above. Thank you for joining your desert frontiersman Alan for another Southwest Gold story. Check out my large catalog of Southwest videos and playlists on historical tales, legends, lost gold stories, and adult bedtime stories. If you like a certain image from my videos, tell me in comments and give timestamp. Happy trails! Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more great content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.